this is the last session before we get to go have happy hour and a party and re-energize in that way. But I'm really excited because I've actually had in my lifetime the opportunity to interview countless founders from all kinds of really incredible companies all over the world. And I will say that I've had interview opportunities with them, but I've also had the opportunity to work with the founders of Trainual, not only as an advisor, but an interim VP of business development and partnerships. And I want to say a couple of things before they come up. One is that I think all of this is a reflection of who they are. I think visions are measured by the people they attract. So I think that this is absolutely in line with the fact that when we look out here, we see people who have fallen in love with the story and inserted themselves into it. So it's pretty special when you find founders who actually lay out a story that we can be a part of. And so without further ado, to end our time here on Customer Day, can you please help me welcome Chris and Jonathan Ronzio. All right, wonderful. Oh, they've been up here a lot. I feel like you guys have already been up here. Is that on?
Hello.
All right, wonderful.
It's
yes.
on.
Okay, so I think that now that we have your captive attention, I do want to ask you first, because we're going to talk about the Antarctica trip in a second, which is out of this world. But tell me this, when you look out here and you see all these beautiful people, okay, look at them. You guys can look at each other. You're beautiful too. Look at each other real quick, awkwardly. Look at each other.
Hi, Mom.
Their mom is actually here. But what I want to know is, like, when you look out here at everybody and you see this response to Playbook, where you guys are, having literally you have somebody who has used Trainual in every country. I think North Korea is in there somewhere, right?
No.
Okay, all right.
They tried to use it.
They tried to use it and it got reprimanded. Okay, good. But the impact is global and it's massive. Can I ask an honest question? Did you expect all of this?
0%, I will say. You know, founders you think should be visionary and like, oh yeah, we knew this all along. We knew this was going to be a huge product. Honestly, when we started the company, I told Jonathan, if we could make like $10,000 a month in money that was just coming in from subscriptions, like we'd be golden. And that was the original vision, was like, let's just make money that people pay and we don't have to do anything.
Be less honest.
Yeah. So that was the original vision.
Inspirational.
The vision's evolved a lot since then, but that it was a low bar at the beginning.
And I'll be perfectly honest, I did not even see myself involved longer than the first 6 months to a year. Chris had his consulting company at the time. I had an adventure media company at the time. I'll talk about this a little bit more tomorrow, but my background prior to Trainual, like in no way was it like SaaS CMO founder. No, I was like getting paid to travel around the world and climb mountains. And, but like Chris and I had always worked together. And when it came time to pull this product out of consulting and launch it, he, wanted my help on the copywriting and the brand and the storytelling and build the website and all those things. And so my wife and I came out to Arizona for a winter, 2017 into 2018, just to help launch this thing. And then we started working together again. It had been the first time since the video company 6-7 years prior. And there's just a magic to the dynamic between us that like it started to build momentum and I just loved it. I loved working together again. And so here we are this many years later. I fell in love with the product, with the mission, and with just collaborating with my brother.
Yeah. Any other family-owned businesses out there? Raise their hands. People who work in the family. Yeah. So listen, real quick, we'll ease into this, okay? But you guys, I don't know if you guys know this, they're brothers. So, and highly competitive as well. And I want to know, and we all want to know, because you're both the same size, is how...
Wait. We're not both the same
Hold on a minute. You don't let me... I'm asking the questions. So were you competitive as kids? Did you play sports together? What was that like, and how has that manifested itself into business? Do you ever feel like that coming in at all between the two of you?
We're good at different things, I would say. John, like I did all the traditional stuff. I did basketball and baseball and football, and Jonathan was like X Games, skateboarding, knows how to do an ollie, kickflip, whatever. I don't even know any other words other than ollie when it comes to skateboarding, but like he was snowboarding and mountaineering, and I don't know, is there a reason for that you pursued all that stuff?
we're about to unpack some shit, right? No, I'm just
Drama.
kidding. I'm just kidding. No, well, you're right though. Maybe it was just finding my own way, finding my own path, and also I was always more drawn to the creativity of extreme sports, and in snowboarding or in trail running or in mountaineering, like it's just like you really chart your own course, right? Versus like I don't know, this speaks to you in this product, I guess, the systemized, organized way of professional sports, right? But like even in the first couple years of Trainual, I don't know if anybody's seen the ads way back then, has been a part of the story since then, but like while Chris was on the starting, he was a starting point guard, varsity basketball, et cetera, on all those traveling teams, that wasn't me. Like I could play, I liked it, but that wasn't my story. But when Chris was 15 and we were on a family vacation, I knew how to dive and he didn't. And so there's a home video from Chris learning, trying, and failing how to dive into a pool that became a Trainual ad that says diving without training. And it was just our home video that I started running of Chris. And then our first
His whole strategy was just embarrass him. I got the CEO title. He's like, I'll show him.
Our first retreat, we went to North Star in Tahoe with 9 people. That was the whole team at the time. And I got a video of Chris just falling down a black diamond, and that became skiing without training. That was a whole campaign.
Okay. I mean, we're really unpacking some stuff up here, but it is interesting though, because I think that both, Jonathan, this one's for you, but I think your propensity to want to trailblaze and go out in the wilderness and those pieces have probably, outside of just embarrassing Chris, have also been like a superpower of yours in terms of like resilience in the business, right? Did you feel like some of those things that you learned from those passions you had have translated into your role, even as it's kind of like done here?
100%. Yeah. I mean, because when you go out and challenge yourself in those kinds of environments where like 5 months before launching Trainual, I was on Denali up in Alaska for 3 weeks, on the glacier, just like disconnected from everything, leading 3 of my friends like on a rope team across the Kahiltna Glacier, where just blizzards and whiteouts and people on other teams all around us are falling through crevasses and stuff.
So relatable.
And I'm saying
3 weeks though, not 3 months.
Yeah, not 3 months. But like when you do those kinds of things, however you push yourself, it might be your first 5K, it might be climbing Denali, but when you start to do those things and test your limits, you bring that back to how you work with your teams, and it creates a limitless kind of mindset. And also the small things in the day-to-day seem pointless to worry about, right? Like when you're used to adapting to the harshest climates on Earth, something that went wrong with the strategy, the campaign, the collaboration, whatever else, is such a minor thing.
Yeah, it makes Zoom meetings feel pretty obsolete, But speaking of harsh environments, this entire talk was actually around the fact that you guys went to Antarctica. But let me just preface this with saying you did it while building a business. Like, I don't know where the idea came from, and this is where we should probably start this story, is that somewhere along the way, you guys were like, we're going to do some hard stuff, like build a business, and then we're going to just like go to Antarctica and run a marathon there in the middle of all this crazy growth in our business. Who thought of it? Where did that idea come in? And what was like, oh wait, if it was your idea, by the way.
And can you guess?
I could definitely guess it was your idea. I want to know what Chris's response was.
I'll start, and then I'll let Jonathan set up the idea. So when we were starting Trainual, there was a lot of thinking, like, where are we going to be in 3 years and 5 years? We were setting a lot of goals for the business. And as a result, we were setting a lot of personal goals. And so we were just in this mindset, I think, of like big picture brainstorming. Where are we going to be in the next few years? And in the same way that short term, I was after like $10,000 of recurring revenue, we're like, imagine if the business could do $1 million, and it was like we were setting these big visions far out. And so that was on the business side. And then on the fitness side, I was very inactive at this time. At the beginning of Trainual, I had been consulting for 5 years or so. And I don't know if there's a lot of consultants here, but consulting is kind of like take people to nice dinners. and get into fancy wine and just put on pounds. You know, like that was my story in the 5 years leading up to Trainual. I was not very active, and so Jonathan was pushing me to get into these sort of fitness events. And so the idea of doing something like this was not even nearly on my radar, but I'll let you set up the idea.
So it was on my radar because I had, a bucket list I have since I was probably 20. I encourage everybody, if you have not officially written one down, please do it, because a bucket list that is not written down is not guaranteed to happen. And the reason it's called a bucket list is because you want to do it before you die. And so turn that into a to-do list, write it down, and start checking things off. On mine were 7 continents and run a marathon. In the beginning of 2018, I had been to 6 continents, and I had not run a marathon. And I was not a runner. Like, I would climb, I would do Spartan races, but that was like not really running. It was more obstacles, and but those 2 things were on my bucket list. And so, out here in the first few months of the business, I just happened to be thinking, again, long term, what does growth look like personally, professionally, all these other areas. And I just happened to Google Antarctica Marathon. I didn't realize it was a thing, but I was like, maybe I could do both of these. And turns out it's a thing. And so when I saw that and decided I want to do that, I told Chris about it, and he was like, well, there's no way you're going to Antarctica without me, right?
Yeah, it was, I guess the competitiveness came out. I was like, if he goes there, people are going to think he's so cool, and I can't have that. So I have to go with him.
Actually, can you bring up the slide of we have some photos that we'd like to share with you as well, because Antarctica, you need to see what's going on there.
Yeah, so this was when we were on the boat, kind of our first glimpse of the main shelf of the main continent there. And it is just the most wild thing to see in person. Has anyone else been down there? I know they do.
We got a hand raised in the back.
Okay, awesome. So if you don't know anything about the trip to Antarctica, it is a voyage, first of all. And so when we signed up for this, we thought, okay, we're running a race in Antarctica. That's not like something you Uber to and then do and go home, right? Like, you have to actually make a journey. Like, there is an experience of even getting there. And so the experience of getting to Antarctica was 3 days in Buenos Aires, a plane ride down to Ushuaia, which is the very southern tip of Patagonia between Argentina and Chile. And then you get on a boat, and there's a 3-day passage across the Drake Passage, which is the most dangerous ocean in the world, because it's where the Atlantic Ocean, the Pacific Ocean, and the Arctic Ocean, Southern Ocean combine. And so they're all splashing into each other, and there can be upwards of 30, 40-foot swells in the waves.
Did you guys know that before you went?
It was not on the brochure.
I was about to sit up here and be like, they do hard things. There's fearless guys. No, it wasn't in there?
No. There are certain things that I don't tell Chris or my friends about the ideas that I want to pursue. So there are even fewer things that I tell our parents about the ideas that I pursue.
Sorry, Mom. But so there was a lot of stuff there too. So this is the first time you saw it, but when you got there, what other things did you see when you started to get into it?
A lot of penguins. These are all pictures we took, which is so wild. This next one is crazy. Okay, so do you see the bird above the penguins? Penguins don't fly. I don't know if you all know this, but the bird above the penguins is called a skua. It's like some kind of eagle that eats penguins. And so they're doing this briefing on the boat before we go out to land, and they're telling us for the first time about these skuas, and they're like, look, they eat penguins, and they think you guys are penguins. So if they dive bomb you, if you see a bird coming at you, just throw your hands in the air like this, and they'll scurry away, and maybe they'll grab your hat or something. We're like, what? Excuse me?
Have a nice race.
Yeah. So they didn't set us up for this. There was a lot of things I didn't know, but But yeah, the penguins were incredible. They would have these Zodiacs. And so, Antarctica doesn't have like a dock that you pull into. They have these Zodiac boats that they lower off the ship that we were on, this kind of like industrial cruise ship thing. There were how many 100 people on the boat? So it was about 100 people on this ship with us. There were like 60 runners and 40 crew and medical people. And they would lower these Zodiac boats, and then you'd have to put on these huge rubber boots, get totally sanitized, get on the boats, and then they would take you to 10 feet from shore, and you would sludge through the water and to get to the continent. So it was a pretty crazy experience.
Yeah, man. For all of us, there's one guy that went to Antarctica in the back, and all of us are like, what? But I will say that this also was happening. So for a little bit more backstory here, is that this was 5 years before you actually did it, right? So how you decided 5 years, and you didn't even know where the business was going to be, the growth that you were going to have, but you committed to this marathon.
Yeah, I mean, it was probably February of 2018. We launched the business in January 2018 when we came across this idea. We committed to it. Neither of us, again, at the time, we had not run a marathon. We had not even run a half marathon at that time. Initially, the waiting list was 3 years, and then COVID happened, and it became 5 years. And so, but yeah, when we started it, it was like, all right, neither of us can afford this trip right now. We are just registering for this waiting list, but like we can't afford this currently.
It was $100 deposit. We were okay,
sure,
put some skin in the game. See if they call our numbers.
That Cybertruck life.
Right.
Yeah, I'll give you 150 now. Yeah, it sounds good.
But there was just that intention. It was like, cool, we'll sign up for the waiting list, and by the 3 years, eventually became 5. By the time our time comes around, like we will have built a business that allows us to get away for 3 weeks to a month to go do this thing. We will be able to actually afford this trip, and we will have run marathons by then, because this wasn't going to be the first one. You don't want your first one to be there, right? So there was a lot of planning around life and business that had to go into achieving this goal.
Yeah, I think it's a cool idea to commit to things that are far enough in the future and a major enough change in your life that you're going to have to subscribe to a totally different set of habits to get there. And that's what this was about. It was so crazy, the gap between a marathon in Antarctica and my couch in Scottsdale was so big and so wide. I was like, okay, this is going to instill some habits over the next few years. And then you can start to break down, I think Haifa talked about this before, the steps between A and B or A and Z. And so you can say, all right, I'm going to need to run a marathon not in Antarctica in order to be prepared for that variable. And to do that, I'm going to have to run a shorter race, and I'm going to have to get shoes, and I'm going to have to do all these small habits that lead up to that thing. So I think it was really cool to have this so far out in the future that it was scary, but it also created some habits.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. By the way, the point that I feel like I still can't believe is that you hadn't run a marathon yet. But since then, by the way, and I do think this deserves a round of applause, you just finished the New York City Marathon together. Is that right?
Yeah, last week.
Huge round of applause, yeah. And the reason why that's applause-worthy is because when you sit around, it's like I keep hearing this voice in my head like, did you die? It's like, no, every time you started moving a little further toward that goal, now more and more is attainable. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, because once you've experienced something like this, you think, okay, what is the next big challenge? And there's a lot of different vectors that you can challenge yourself on. Is it like that you're going to go to another crazy place? Is it that you're going to do it faster? Is it that you're going to get to a certain team? Is it that it's a fundraising goal? And so I think we've found other ways to challenge ourselves, because we're not signing up for a race on the moon or anything right now.
Right now.
You did talk about space tourism this morning.
Yeah,
so
I would do it.
We'll see.
I think it'd be easier to run. There's less gravity. But yeah, it's like at some point there's not like bigger, crazier things to do. And so you have to find different ways to challenge yourself, whether it's speed or the team that you're with or the cause you're doing it for, things like that.
I think the one dangerous thing is that people up here can look at you guys and go, unflappable. amazing. They must just have a perfect life, and this is just like the next thing that they keep accomplishing, right? So the question I actually have is like entrepreneurship, like marathon running. There's probably things that go sideways along that journey. Is there anything that comes to mind, like this pops in your brain, being like, well, that went sideways and that didn't go well, and I'm not just the race, but like in your journey of building Trainual in that time period?
Before touching on Trainual or the business, because there is a core part of how we started the team and the culture in the early days that relate to this that I want to get to, but you talked about the New York City Marathon, right? I think one thing I would call out is we just raced that for Beyond Type 1, which is the Type 1 diabetes team that we raised money for. We co-captained actually a team of 60 runners for that organization because Chris has had type 1 diabetes for 30 years. He was diagnosed at 8 years old. And so when we go back to even 2018 where he talked about like I was trying to get him out onto these things, right? Like Chris was growing up, he was always like the inspiration for me. In like I was the 3.5-year-old younger brother that was seeing, you know, him deal with this disease, yet still be so entrepreneurial with the video business and even car washing and whatever other early kid businesses there were, right? But still be the all-star athlete and still be the AP student and all of those things. Like it was admirable and a hero of mine, growing up. And then we got to this point in our lives where I knew that Chris was on the wrong track. And so like I was for this.
Not like drugs or anything.
No.
Throw that out there.
Heroin. All right, yeah.
But for the sake of his health, I knew that he needed to get out, taking this seriously again. And so I would say that is one of the major things that was like, course correcting along the way. And that's why, New York was so meaningful.
Yeah, so kind of around the time that right before Trainual started, I remember going to a naturopathic doctor because I wanted to get my whole workup done, and they told me that my arteries were like calcifying, and it was like the worst appointment I've ever had. I'm sitting there like feeling faint, like my life is over, and they're telling me that this is pretty much you're doomed. And so I remember like thinking, okay, this is like my body's getting older, my arteries are freezing up, like start getting my will ready, I guess. And Jonathan's like, no, like you need to challenge yourself and push yourself. And so that was a big part of it, was like, how can I be like not let the diabetes get in the way, but actually challenge myself and push myself. And what was so crazy to like swerve into, business lane here is the training for the first 5K race we ever did, and running through like the trails here in Scottsdale. I started listening to podcasts about SaaS, about software businesses. And I started just understanding the metrics of how they measure software businesses. And I started listening to investors get interviewed and operators get interviewed. And it was like the running was sort of my excuse to be out of the office, but the education I was getting through all the podcasts and the time alone and the thinking time, the strategic thinking time, I credit to so much of the success we had in the first couple of years that I was out of the office doing that work.
Yeah, after that first winter of getting Trainual off the ground, I went back east where we grew up, and I'm living back in Boston now, but from then until the pandemic, I was out here for a week of every single month, sleeping on an air mattress at Chris's house. And every month, 3-4 mornings a week, we were out in the trails running and talking strategy and coming up with ideas. And that also became a huge piece of momentum for the business. But like the early team, what I wanted to come back to is like we brought that to our founding team, to the hires, and it's still a core part of who we are and what our culture is about on personal, professional growth. And I remember every Monday morning we would have a whiteboard session with the 5 people that were around at the time, the 10 people that were around, and we all had, every quarter we would set, what's your like physical challenge this quarter, these 90 days? What is your, challenge, the big door that you're trying to open in the business in the next 90 days? What is something that you need to change in your relationship or you want to better in your family life? And we all would hold ourselves accountable, checking in on these goals. And that goal setting culture with our team, not just about like new sales or product development, but about the whole piece of who we are as people, was a major part of building the foundation of the culture we have today.
Yeah, I've actually been a part of that. and I would absolutely say that unique, right? How many people feel that when they're talking about this and thinking about people individually setting their own goals and being a part of the story also will push them to new limits as well, which is absolutely what I experienced. So I do think that's really special.
Yeah, the transparency of somebody talking with you about paying off their debt, or about building a garden in their backyard, or about developing a better relationship with their parent who's out of town, or those kind of things, like that's not usually work conversation. But I think it's so important to recognize that investing in all areas of your life is like the tide rises for all ships. You know, like if you have a strong foundation at home and your relationships and you feel like you're in physical health, you're so much stronger in the business. I remember in some of those early months, like when we were first starting running, it was like bananas to me that I would like run 4 miles before work or something, and then I'd strut into work like, what's up? What'd you do? When'd you wake up? What time did you get? You know what? You've got that like energy because you know that you're like killing it in a certain area of your life and it carries over to the other area.
It's amazing. You did, can we switch gears a little bit? Because you did talk about the team. And I think the team is probably the most special part of this. Just speaking about like kind of leaving like this, how much trust did you have to put in your team in order to run Trainual and have Trainual be not something you're focusing on while you're training for something like this? And then tell us, was it actually hard to let that go, or was there anything that kind of was something you had to overcome in order to put that kind of trust in your team while you pursued this? And some of them are in here, so you can't lie. So it's good.
I don't feel at this point, when the 5 years came and this was March of 2023, I didn't feel like it was hard to leave. And that speaks to the team that we've built and the quality of the people that are on the team and how we've gone about structuring the departments and building leaders and empowering leaders. And so, no, I didn't feel like it was hard to leave. I think Jamie joked that this was like the most like internally marketed trip that ever existed, because like every single like Monday all hands, Chris would be like ending the meeting, and a reminder, Jonathan and I are going to Antarctica, and he just like was, for months just saying that. So like people knew it was coming and we prepped for it, but no, I didn't find it hard to leave the team.
Can you speak to some of the preparations and like how you prepared to leave?
Yeah, so like Jonathan said, it was a lot of marketing in advance, a lot of telling people in advance. And I think over the course of the few years before that, there's so many little instances that you leave for an event like this and you're out and you're unplugged for a few days. And you've got this temptation to just be on your laptop and checking in on Slack or emails or being super connected. And for me, it started with just totally unplugging and going to an event where I'd turn off my Wi-Fi or turn off my connection for a full day and knowing that everything was fine when I got back. You know, like catastrophic things don't happen. And when you're fully in the room, you get so much more out of it. And so for me, it started with like conferences. And then, as the business got bigger and I had partner trips or speaking events or things that I was out for, we kind of inched our way up to being able to be gone for several weeks at a time. The other thing I would mention is in my consulting business, there were only 5 of us when we merged it into Trainual. But in the consulting business, from the very beginning, my wife and I would take 4 weeks in the summer and go out of town. We would go to a different city and we would optimize around the family. And I would work maybe a couple hours a day just checking in on things. And so I had that built into my schedule at the beginning of Trainual. And so whatever size business you are, I think you've got to think, how do I create that structure and that team and that system now so that it is there as I scale? So that like at least like I knew I could get away. That existed from the beginning.
Yeah, it seems like it was baked into you guys at an early age too, right? Especially with some of the early experiences in business that you had in consulting. By the way, you mentioned something earlier. Did you have businesses before the consulting, what did you have? Were you always an entrepreneur, like from an early age?
Yeah, when I was 4, my uncle said he would give me $4 to wash his car, and I knew that $4 is exactly how much it took to buy a Ninja Turtle action figure. And so to me, washing cars was like, which new Ninja Turtle am I going to get at Toys R Us? And so, yeah, I was always very, very into that. And then it was, we had a landscaping business, a car detailing business, sold wrapping paper door to door.
Sold rap CDs.
So when CD burners first came out,
Shout out CD burners, right? Yeah, actually that's a good business model.
And they burned it 1x. If anybody remembers that. I was borrowing my friends' CDs, burning them, selling the CDs, and paying them a 50% affiliate fee for providing the CD for my library. So yeah, I was always doing that kind of stuff.
Is that when he took the wrong path, Jonathan? Is that when he started
That's
down
when That's when it started.
That's when it started. He sold CDs and then smack. So I want to ask this because I think knowing you and being your friends as well, you're some of the biggest, most powerful dreamers I've ever met. And I think that you can say that about people, but I actually want to know, because you guys are who you are, what the process is behind that. Like, we are all here because of a vision you had at some point in your life. So tell me, you have to believe that you are powerful in that way and your dreams come true. So can you help us unpack ways that we can also glean from that and figure out your process?
I'll answer while you think of a better answer. I would say that all of us in the room that have started something, you notice some kind of problem, you see a vision in the world for a solution to that problem. And for me, the genesis of Trainual was the consulting work that I was doing, and realizing that in so many business, they had these fractured cultures. You know, they had people that were afraid to share their opinion. They had people that had worked somewhere else and had great ideas from their last job, but no one ever asked them. And so they felt threatened to just do it the way that this company does it. There were people that didn't feel like they had any kind of growth path. And so I did in my consulting business over 2,000 one-on-one confidential interviews with employees at the businesses that I worked with. And just hearing these themes over and over again, it was like, there's got to be a better way to do this. Like, we were not meant to run crappy companies, right? Like, what is the way that a company is supposed to run? And so then you read these books and everything, and they're telling you to work on your systems and your processes, and it felt like, well, where's the color by number guide to doing that? You know, I felt like I was with every company starting from scratch, and it's like, okay, get out the blank canvas, here we go. And with Trainual, the idea was, let's make a tool that's designed to put everything where it goes. You know, like, if my company's supposed to have an org chart, let's have an org chart builder and not make you struggle in PowerPoint. You know, if my company's supposed to have roles and responsibilities and job descriptions, let's put like a place for those so that you can just fill them out and use AI to assist completing them. And so it just felt so like, why isn't this there? And when you've got that feeling of like, this needs to exist, and you start talking to people about that feeling, and they're like, yeah, I don't know, why doesn't that exist? Then you sort of, it reinforces the confidence. And so I think vision starts as kind of like a whisper. It's something that you say in small circles, and then the more you say it, you develop this conviction, and then you can start shouting it, and then you start attracting people to it. But vision doesn't start screaming from the mountaintops at the beginning, because no one's listening. You know, you've gotta share it in those small circles first.
That's like that's a bumper sticker moment. I don't know if you guys caught that, right? Like, people are not listening when they're in the early infancy. That's so good, dude. All right, so listen, are you gonna up-level that?
I'm gonna do my best.
All right.
I'm gonna talk about it more macro, but I think what Chris is talking about is that itch that just takes hold in your brain. Like when you walk by like a sunglasses hut and you stop and you put on a pair of sunglasses, and then you're like, oh, these are sweet, but I don't need them. And you walk away. And then the next day you're like, man, I really wish I had those sunglasses, right? And then you don't need them. And then a week goes by and you think, man, I really want those. And then if you see it again, you get them, right? Like that's a stupid example, but from a standpoint of, I'm saying from a standpoint of like what actually just sticks in your mind that you can't let go of. It might be the domain that you bought 10 years ago, like Chris did with Trainual. It might be some random idea, but what is just living there? And then it comes out of is that out of opportunity, out of necessity? This Chris speaking to like, this needs to exist, right? That's you thinking it's necessity. There's an opportunity mixed with necessity. I think the other side of it is pure curiosity. I think that's what is more my lane, is that I just look at something and think, what's around the corner? What's on the other side of that? That's a tall mountain. What's at the top? Can I see from the top? And it's just always been my MO. Like, I'd see a log fallen in the woods and I had to walk on top of the log and see where it went. And I think that that's just innate in big dreamers, is that you test the bounds of your curiosity, and along the way you figure out what works.
I was tracking with you on the sunglasses thing, by the way. Okay. I just
Thank
wanna
you.
let You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Yeah. I just want to make you feel good.
I was not there.
All right, we've got probably time for just a couple more things, but I want to say this because I also think this is unique about you guys. And by the way, I hope you're learning a lot about these founders. This is really fun to be able to actually share and hear all about you guys and how this came to be. Your mom's here. Your kids are here. Well, sound check yesterday, the kids were up here. Your son was saying poop on the microphone. It was really this magical experience, right? But I feel like that's been a big part of how you have built this business. And I found a quote that Chris did probably like 5 years ago in a random article, and I wanted to read it. Are you nervous? You're like, what did I say? Yeah. I used to think that investing time in my personal life was an expense of the business. But over time, I found that investing in my personal life amplifies my focus and productivity in my business life. And I remember sitting there thinking about that, and I'm like, how much does it actually play to have the family dynamic in what you do? And how, for a lot of these people, how many people have families? Raise your hand, you have kids and stuff. They're not here though, right? Boom, happy hour. But I will say, we do it for a purpose. We're doing things on purpose. How much of what you care about personally has come into this mission and vision?
Yeah, I think we've had ads about this that were like, the official training software of PTO, or the official software of spending more time with your family. Like on the back of my business card at Organize Chaos, it said, we organize chaos and get things done so you have more time to do what you love. And it was the time to do what you love that I always focused on with the clients that I worked with, because everybody's in business for a reason. We're not all in business because we just want to work all day and have no life, right? Like if you had infinite money and infinite resources, what would you do? What relationships would you be cultivating? That was always top of mind for me. And so I thought, in the same way that we would take those summers off in my consulting business, I was like, I want to build this business to support the life I want, the lifestyle I want. And as founders, we have the luxury of kind of writing the rules and creating the policies and building the culture that is a reflection of the life that you want. And I think if your culture happened kind of by accident and you're like, oh, actually, I feel sort of out of line with how my business is run, then there's an opportunity to step back and say, how would I rewrite this if I started over from scratch? And now Trainual being my third tax-paying business, I've learned from like the first couple on how I want to run the business, and family is like at the center of it.
What about you?
I would echo all of that. I mean, it's a matter of setting the right priorities and leading by example. We talked about that on the exec panel earlier. Like it comes from the top. And so it is your responsibility as a founder, as a leader in your company, to set the example of how to prioritize what, right? And there are certain times when like the chaos will ebb and flow and priorities pop up and you have to be at an event, or you have to be on the sales call, or you have to take that partner meeting, or you have to go deep into whatever it might be. And I look at it at a longer term, right? It's like on the course of 90 days, on the course of a month, on the course of a year, are you balanced in the right ways? And I'll talk about this a lot more in my session tomorrow, but like, is your life balanced in the ways that you want? And how are you setting the example for your team? Because on a week and a day, it might not have perfect work-life balance, and that's okay as long as the long-term view does. And like, I want to be able to take my 2.5-year-old to his swim lessons or gymnastics or whatever needs to be done, but my wife also knows that I can't do it every single week based on what's going on in the business. And you just have to set those ground rules and show that it's possible to prioritize family, prioritize your health, prioritize date nights, prioritize what the mountains in Antarctica and whatever else, right? Like,
I remember one of the clients that I had consulting. I was there one afternoon, and their controller, her son was playing in his like first baseball game that he was pitching in his first high school game, and she wanted to leave early to go watch the game, and the boss said no. And I remember sitting there like pulling my hair out, like, this is crazy. What? She could do this later today. What do you mean you're not going to let her out of there? Like, do you think she's still with the business? No, she doesn't work there anymore. But I saw so many of those examples that were like, how there's a better way to do this that I feel better about. How do we enable that?
All right, we have time for one more question. Thank you for sharing that. you guys jokingly, oh yeah, do we have more pictures? Yeah, look at you guys. Is this on the boat going across the Drake?
This was chilling. Yeah. This is actually.
Yeah, it was not endurance like the Shackleton boat. It was a pretty nice boat.
It was a nice boat.
Wonderful.
This was a beautiful sunrise on the islands as we were headed home. That's like a military camp you can see there, or not a military camp, a research camp.
It was research
They can't
centers.
have- yeah.
Oh, that was the crazy thing about this is like we didn't know what day we were running the race. Like we got across the Drake Passage and we got into the Antarctica Peninsula, and then they were like, we can't land right now because of the weather. So we might run tomorrow. And then we like woke up the next day. They're like, yeah, weather's still bad. Like we can't get the Zodiacs to shore, so we're just gonna cruise down further on the peninsula and we'll do some kayaking and Zodiac tours and whatever else. And but we just didn't know what day we were going.
It was like an 8-hour notice. They were like, hello, we're going to run a marathon in the morning.
Yeah.
Please go to bed.
And then right before we were about to like get on the Zodiacs and go to run, which that's King George Island, and that's where there's like 6 different research bases from different countries. We were actually running from the Russian base to the Uruguayan base, and the like general of the Russian base called the boat, and this was like right after like the Russian-Ukraine war broke out, and the general was like, yeah, you can't run here anymore. He was joking. He was like, they were like all down for us to run, but like that was the last little like, oh, I guess we're not running at all on this trip. And then they had us over, and they were wonderful.
told us that we would definitely run the race, but it might be like 400 laps around deck 4. They're like, we might have to run it on the boat.
It's so fitting that Trainual is here in the desert. How many people are from Arizona in here? Anybody, some local folks? Yeah, I was here in the summer, and I melted. During the summer, and I remember sitting here going like, you remember the first pioneers, and they're just like going cresting over the ridge. They see all the cactuses. It's like 120 degrees, and they're just like, yep, this is home right here, right? I feel like that's so good that Trainual's here and you guys are at the helm. Last question, okay? Last question. So you kind of jokingly said, like post Antarctica, like there's not a marathon on the moon yet, right? I think we do want to know what is the next thing. Like not just where you're going to go do an endurance sport, but like what occupies your thoughts about the future of Trainual, and like what can we get excited about because your visions seem to come true?
Ooh. All right, so there's the fitness side, there's the business side. I mentioned the business vision is every business has a playbook, and that feels like a 30-year, 40-year sort of vision, that it's just so normal that everyone has one, and that's what we're chasing. That feels like the horizon that you never quite get to, but directionally, that's what we're chasing.
But this conference, we're gonna have 300 people here tomorrow. We'd love to have 3,000. We'd love to have 30,000, right? Like this community is incredible, and it's built around the vision Chris is talking about. And so we get so much energy from this, and to see that grow is amazing.
Yeah, on the fitness side, so right now we're running all the majors, the major marathons. So we've done Boston, we've done New York, signed up for Chicago. Then there's Berlin and Tokyo, and Sydney just got announced. And so that's at least something fun to do every year. I don't like running the long distances. I don't love it. It's not great, but I feel like I saw that they have this thing, the majors, and other people had done it, and I was like, all right, I guess I'm part of the way there. So I want to do that. I want to check that box.
Yeah, I'll be on that journey for sure. On the running side, I also found that there is a thing called the Great World Race or the World Marathon or something like that, and it's a marathon on 7 continents in 7 days, and so that's something that's on my radar in the near maybe 3 years or something. We'll see. I have climbed 3 of the 7 summits, so the 7 summits are still on my radar. There's the Explorer's Grand Slam, which is the 7 summits plus walking to both poles. But that would take a little more time off from Trainual, so that's long term.
Jeez. Anybody else just feel like what am I doing with my life? You know what I mean? It's like, hey, when I invite you guys to dinner and you're like, hey man, I'm sorry, I'm running 100 miles and I can't make it. It makes me feel like, you're my favorite friends, I think. No, seriously, in all seriousness, your vision is why we're here. It's so incredible that visions that are starting as a whisper that maybe no one's listening turn into something like this. And What are you gonna interrupt my crescendo?
No, go for it. Go for it.
No, go. You do.
I was going to say part of the vision, I mean, we're getting to take, so if any of you follow me on Instagram, which you absolutely should, because the ones of you that I know the best in the room are the ones that are messaging me all the time on Instagram. So please do engage. You know that I'm a huge Phoenix Suns fan, and I've been working them for the last 5 years to turn them into a client and a partner. And so it's so fun that we get to take you over to their headquarters and really talk more about that partnership. So that was a big vision thing.
Well, first of all, you didn't just announce it, did you?
No.
So the Suns and the Mercury in Player 15 became a client of Trainual this year, which is pretty exceptional, right? Huge deal.
Which means the Suns are probably going to win a championship this year.
Yeah, I mean, if they do, can we all whoever your team is, can you get behind the Suns to win just so we can say it was Trainual?
So that's a nice PR win.
Yeah, what a great way to close this session out because we're about to head over there, which is really exciting. Hey, if you got a lot of value from this session, can you give a huge round of applause to Jonathan and Chris? Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.
We'll see you across the street.